I think, do whatever you can to keep your feet on the ground. Don't read your notices.
She was the face of Disney's golden age, the girl every family trusted, the smile the whole world believed in. But behind that bright, effortless smile, there was a moment that broke her completely. Not during a scandal, not after a failed marriage, not when her fortune disappeared overnight. It happened quietly, on a movie set, during one single scene. A scene that forced her to confront emotions she had never lived through. At an age when most children were still learning who they were, Hayley Mills was only 14 years old when she filmed it. And when the cameras finally stopped rolling, she walked away shaken, drained, and overwhelmed in a way she never forgot. Years later, she admitted that this moment stayed with her for decades. Not because of fame, not because of pressure, but because it touched a truth from her real life that no one around her truly understood. This was the scene that made Disney's most beloved child star break down in tears, and it revealed the hidden cost of growing up perfect in front of the world. Before that moment, Hayley Mills had already lived a life most adults could barely imagine, and her story begins far earlier than anyone realized. The hospital scene in Pollyanna never left Hayley Mills. At 14, she had delivered exactly what the film needed. Critics praised her. Audiences embraced her. Disney used the success to reinforce her image as the embodiment of hope and optimism. But emotionally, the cost was invisible. Hayley later explained that she didn't yet have the life experience to process such heavy material. She could follow direction. She could hit emotional marks, but she didn't know how to let go once the scene ended. The pressure to remain cheerful didn't stop when filming wrapped. It followed her everywhere. She wrote in her memoir, Forever Young, that the constant demand to stay optimistic, both on screen and in real life, slowed her natural emotional growth. She was praised for maturity while being denied the space to actually grow. The world saw Pollyanna as a heartwarming classic. For Hayley, it became a symbol of contradiction. It launched her career, it defined her public identity, and it quietly revealed the reality of child stardom. Long hours, heavy emotional expectations, responsibilities far beyond her age. Even decades later, she spoke about the film with a mixture of pride and caution. She loved what it gave her, but she never forgot what it took from her. That scene wasn't just a performance. It was an early lesson in how deeply acting could reach into a person's inner life, and it set the tone for everything that followed. Despite the emotional strain, financial collapse, career uncertainty, and heartbreak, Hayley Mills did not disappear. She adapted, she endured, and she continued working across theater, film, and television, rebuilding her life piece by piece. Her story isn't just about fame, it's about resilience, about a child who carried adult emotions too early, and a woman who learned, slowly and painfully, how to reclaim herself beyond the roles written for her. For many fans, she will always be Disney's brightest star, but behind that image is a life shaped by pressure, loss, and quiet strength. And that is the part of Hayley Mills' story that was never meant to be forgotten. Hayley Catherine Rose Vivian Mills was born on April 18, 1946, in London, into a world where performance was not a dream, but a daily reality. Her father, Sir John Mills, was already one of Britain's most respected actors. Her mother, Mary Hayley Bell, was a successful playwright and novelist whose Words filled their home with stories, scripts, and ideas waiting to be brought to life. Even her younger sister, Juliet, would later follow the same artistic path. For Hayley, creativity surrounded her from the moment she could walk. Scripts lay scattered around the house. Conversations at the dinner table often revolved around characters, rehearsals, and the emotional weight of a storytelling. But growing up in such an environment came with an unspoken burden. She was not just a child, she was Sir John Mills's daughter. From an early age, people watched her closely. They didn't ask whether she wanted to act. They assumed she would. To refine her discipline, Hayley was sent to Elmhurst Ballet School, where a structure ruled everything. The training taught her grace, posture, and emotional control. It also taught her how to push through discomfort quietly, a lesson that would follow her for the rest of her life. Even then, expectations wrapped around her like an invisible script she never auditioned for. She later admitted that while she felt privileged by her father's fame, she also felt weighed down by it. There was always the sense that she had to live up to something enormous before she fully understood who she was meant to be. At an age when most children were still focused on school and friendships, Hayley was already learning how to be composed, focused, and professional. And then, at just 12 years old, her life changed forever. She stepped in front of a camera not as a hobby, but as a destiny already in motion. When Hayley Mills was just 12 years old, she appeared in the British crime drama Tiger Bay, acting alongside her own father. For most children, standing in front of a professional film crew would have been terrifying. But Hayley stepped into the role with a calm presence that surprised everyone watching. There was something natural about her performance, not forced, not rehearsed to perfection, just honest. Audiences noticed it immediately, so did critics. Her performance earned her the BAFTA Award for Most Promising Newcomer, an achievement that instantly shifted how the industry viewed her. In one moment, she was no longer just Sir John Mills' daughter. She was Hayley Mills, a young actress who could stand entirely on her own. But success at that age came with its own quiet pressure. Winning an award so early didn't remove expectations. It multiplied them. She became deeply aware of comparisons, of the spotlight that followed her every move, and of how much louder her mistakes would sound because of the family name she carried. She once admitted that even as a child, she understood she was expected to be brilliant because brilliance surrounded her. And then someone across the ocean took notice. Walt Disney watched Tiger Bay and saw something far beyond talent. He saw innocence, warmth, and a rare emotional sincerity that couldn't be taught. He didn't leave the casting decision to anyone else. He chose her personally. That single decision pulled Hayley Mills out of British cinema and into the heart of Hollywood. It introduced her to a global audience and quietly reshaped the course of her entire childhood. She was about to become Disney's golden girl, and the world was about to fall in love with her. But with that love came an image she would spend years trying to escape. Walt Disney cast Hayley Mills as the lead in Pollyanna, and almost overnight, her life transformed. The film introduced her to audiences around the world. Her performance was warm, hopeful, and effortlessly charming. Viewers didn't just like her, they trusted her. Pollyanna was a massive success. Hayley won the Academy Juvenile Award and a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer, honors that confirmed what Disney already believed. She could carry an entire film on her shoulders. Disney quickly realized what he had found. Hayley Mills became the heart of the studio's family-friendly image. A year later, she reached an even higher level of fame with The Parent Trap, playing identical twins Susan and Sharon. Audiences were amazed by how easily she gave each character a distinct personality. The film became one of Disney's defining classics, and Hayley became its brightest star. More Disney films followed, each one reinforcing the same image. Sweet, cheerful, endlessly optimistic, publicity teams leaned heavily into that perfection. To the world, Hayley Mills wasn't acting. She was that girl. But while the cameras captured her smile, she was growing up inside an industry that didn't allow space for uncertainty or change. She was expected to remain frozen in time, untouched by adolescence, doubt, or complexity. The pressure wasn't loud, it was constant. She was balancing global fame, her family legacy, and the unspoken demand to always represent joy and innocence. And while audiences adored her, few understood how heavy it was to carry such a flawless image while still trying to discover who she really was. This emotional weight followed her into every role, and long before anyone noticed, it began to build quietly beneath the surface. Eventually, it would collide with reality. As the years passed, Hayley Mills began to change in ways the public refused to accept. She matured naturally, forming her own thoughts, desires, and questions about adulthood. But the industry wanted something else from her. They wanted the same wide-eyed optimism, the same cheerful innocence, the same version of Hayley that had made them comfortable. Studios continued offering her roles built on the sweetness and simplicity, even as she felt herself outgrowing them. Whenever she stepped outside that image, resistance followed, not because her talent had faded, but because the image Disney created was too successful to let go. Hollywood didn't know where to place her anymore. She was no longer a child, yet she wasn't allowed to be fully adult. As the 1960s progressed, her career momentum slowed. Films that once soared at the box office began losing impact, not because she lacked ability, but because audiences struggled to separate the actress from the persona they loved. This kind of typecasting quietly erodes confidence. Hayley later spoke about how scripts arrived with assumptions already attached, expecting her to remain gentle, harmless, and eternally youthful. The pressure seeped into her personal life. During her teenage years, she struggled with her relationship to food and body image. The expectation to remain a small, young, and Disney perfect influenced her in ways she didn't fully understand at the time. Years later, in her memoir Forever Young, she reflected on this period with honesty. She described the agony and ecstasy of being adored worldwide while feeling increasingly boxed in. There were moments of joy, but beneath them, an emotional fatigue grew year by year. She was still smiling for the world, but inside, something was beginning to crack. And soon, one particular film would force her to confront that fracture head-on. In 1967, Hayley Mills took a role that challenged everything the public thought they knew about her. The Family Way, directed by Roy Bolting, was nothing like her Disney films. It explored adult themes, emotional tension, and marital struggles that stood in sharp contrast to the cheerful image audiences were used to. For Hayley, the film represented more than just a career shift. It was an attempt to reclaim her own growth. Some viewers praised her courage, Others felt deeply uncomfortable seeing her step into more mature territory. The reaction was divided, and the division cut deeply. The industry was changing, but not fast enough to carry her with it. She stood in a narrow space between childhood fame and adult legitimacy, unsure of where she truly belonged. This film also marked the beginning of a personal relationship that would shape her emotional life in complicated ways. Hayley grew close to Roy Bolting, an established director 33 years older than her. At a time when her career felt unstable and her identity uncertain, Roy offered a sense of grounding, but the age difference drew intense scrutiny. Questions followed them everywhere. People speculated about influence, control, and whether Hayley was stepping into something she wasn't prepared to navigate. In 1971, they married. For a brief moment, it seemed as if she had found a stability. But marriage didn't erase the weight she carried, but public attention never faded. Her career continued to shift unpredictably. And beneath everything, the emotional strain she had learned to suppress since childhood remained unresolved. Soon, life would test her resilience in ways far more devastating than criticism or career confusion. When Hayley Mills entered adulthood, she was searching for something she had rarely known: stability, belonging, a sense of safety that fame had never provided. Her marriage to Roy Bolting brought moments of calm, but it also carried weight. The age gap, the public scrutiny, and the changing landscape of her career placed constant pressure on their relationship. In 1973, Hayley gave birth to their son, Crispian Mills. Motherhood grounded her in a way nothing else had. For the first time, she was not performing for an audience. She was simply present. Crispian would later grow up to become the lead singer of the band Kula Shaker, carving out his own creative identity just as his mother once had. But even the joy of raising a child could not mend everything that was breaking quietly behind the scenes. By 1977, the marriage ended. The separation left Hayley carrying emotional pieces she had never fully learned how to put back together. And yet, life moved on without pause. Around the mid-1970s, she formed a relationship with actor Lee Lawson. Their bond was more private, less scrutinized, unfolding away from the harsh glare that had followed her earlier years. Together, they had a son, Jason, born in 1976. This chapter of her life felt quieter, more grounded, but it was still shaped by the same inner struggles she had carried since childhood. Public records never revealed a clear reason for their separation. What is known is that the relationship eventually came to an end, becoming another emotional chapter marked by change rather than permanence. Love, for Hayley, was never simple. It was tangled with identity, pressure, and a lifelong effort to understand who she was outside of expectations written for her long before she had a choice. And just as she was trying to find her footing again, another blow arrived, one that would erase years of work in a single moment. For most people, childhood fame comes with one comforting belief: that all the work, all the pressure, all the sacrifice will at least lead to security. For Hayley Mills, that belief collapsed in an instant. By the time she finished her major run with Disney, she had earned the modern equivalent of nearly $17 million. Her films were global successes. She was Disney's biggest teenage star, and everything she touched seemed to turn into profit. Because she was a minor, the money never passed directly through her hands. It was managed, protected, and held for her future, exactly as it was supposed to be. Everyone assumed she would step into adulthood financially secure. But the 1970s brought a brutal shift in the United Kingdom's tax system. For high earners, tax rates climbed to an astonishing 91%. It wasn't a small adjustment. It was a financial earthquake. Actors, musicians, and artists across Britain watched their wealth evaporate, and Hayley Mills became one of its most devastating examples. When she finally gained access to her accounts, she expected to see the reward for years of nonstop work. Instead, she discovered that almost everything was gone. Taxes, fees, financial mismanagement, the fortune she believed was waiting for her had been drained nearly dry. She later described the moment as realizing her earnings had vanished overnight. And for once, that wasn't an exaggeration. Every film, every long day on set, every childhood sacrifice, suddenly they meant very little in practical terms. The shock was crushing. She wasn't facing a setback. She was facing a complete reset. From that moment on, Hayley wasn't working to explore her craft. She was working to survive. She turned to stage performances, then television roles, accepting projects she might once have passed over simply because stability mattered more than prestige. The glamorous world of Disney premieres faded into something far harsher. Every job became essential. Every opportunity mattered. And while she slowly rebuilt, the experience left a scar that never fully healed. But even this wasn't the moment that broke her emotionally. That moment was still waiting. One scene, one role, one quiet collapse that would bring the weight of her entire life rushing to the surface. Long before the financial collapse, before the heartbreak, before the struggle to rebuild her life, there was one moment that quietly changed Hayley Mills forever. It began with a decision made years earlier. When Walt Disney watched Hayley's performance in Tiger Bay, he became convinced she possessed something rare, not just talent, but an emotional honesty that could anchor an entire film. So when casting began for Pollyanna, Disney didn't hesitate. He chose her himself. Production started in 1959 under the direction of David Swift. The cast included seasoned Hollywood actors like Jane Wyman, Carl Malden, and Richard Egan. Hayley was surrounded by professionals who had spent decades learning how to separate themselves from their roles. She was 14. From the outside, the film felt warm, hopeful, and uplifting. But hidden within it was a scene that asked far more of her than anyone realized at the time: the hospital sequence. Until that moment, Pollyanna had been light and optimistic. Then, suddenly, the story shifted. An accident changed everything. Hayley was required to portray fear, pain, and uncertainty with complete emotional control. She had to balance vulnerability with restraint, sadness without breaking Disney's carefully crafted tone. The pressure was immense. She later admitted that she understood how important the scene was. She didn't want to let anyone down, not the director, not the studio, not Walt Disney himself. Take after take, she stayed focused, holding emotions that a child her age had never been taught how to release. When filming finally ended, she didn't snap back into her teenage self. The weight of the scene followed her off set. She felt drained, overwhelmed, emotionally exposed in a way she had never experienced before. Years later, she explained that at 14, she knew how to perform on command, but she didn't yet know how to step out of a character once the cameras stopped rolling. She carried the tension home with her, and that was the moment she quietly broke down. Not in front of the crew, not for the audience, but inside. It was the first time she understood how deeply a role could reach into her real life, and the impact of that realization would stay with her for decades.